Hey everyone, and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Show. I'm your host, Sharon Harding, and today we're discussing the RTX 3080 Ti, Asus's all AMD ROG Strix G15 Advantage Edition laptop, and taking a sneak peek at Razer's new small wireless gaming keyboard. So everyone, we are live as always, and we are taking questions and comments from the viewers. So if you have anything you'd like to ask, just drop that question into the chat on Facebook or YouTube, Periscope, wherever you're watching this, and we will try to answer it live on air. So joining me this week is Tom's Hardware Senior Editor, Andrew Friedman. How are you, Andrew?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. We also have Tom's Hardware Senior Graphics Editor, Jared Walton here. What's going on, Jared?
Oh, it has been quite the last 2 weeks, but yeah, we can get into that later.
Well, part of that excitement comes from you reviewing NVIDIA's newest graphics card, the RTX 3080 Ti, which is supposed to have an MSRP of $1,200, but we all know in this market that's like a pipe dream. But this is NVIDIA's latest graphics card, and Jared, you put it through the ringer. So do you have that card on hand, Jared?
I do. I've got this card. I've actually got a Zotac card as well. That's heavier. Zotac. So you can see, like, it's a little bit bigger.
Zotac's on top, correct?
Yes, Zotac is on top. Zotac is like a 2.5 slot.
That's also a 3080 Ti. That's also a 3080 Ti. The Zotac. Okay.
Yep. And so the 3080 Ti, this is your Founders Edition. Oh, it's upside down. There you go. It looks identical to the 3080. So it's the same 2-slot thickness, dual fans, one on each side, the funky like blow through radiator and stuff. And, it looks like the 3090 as well, except not as fat as the 3090. And the thing is, like, the 3080 was at launch, we were super impressed with the performance and everything looked okay. But over the last 9 months, like, we've discovered like a lot of things about the card, like that the memory runs pretty hot. And especially if you do like cryptocurrency mining, a lot of the cards, including the 3080 Founders Edition, will hit 110C on the memory and throttle and cause problems. And so when we heard about the 3080 Ti and it's going to move from 10 gigabytes to 12 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, and the memory is located, somewhere under here. And it's like, well, adding 20% more memory is going to generate even more heat, and the card will run hotter because it has a higher TDP as well. So these aren't like great things for a design that was it wasn't struggling necessary, but it was pretty much at its limit at 320 watts, is my opinion. I don't know, like I feel like NVIDIA probably should have done more for the thermal upgrades for the 3080 Ti. They say 3080 Ti, I usually say 3080 Ti, whatever. Anyway, performance it's better, it's like 10% better than the 3080. And like 3 or 4% slower than the 3090, and in games, that's fine. But the price, the 3080 price is nominally $700. We haven't seen that price pretty much ever since launch. There were a few cards sold at $700, and then everything else has sold at like $900 or $1,000, and then the cryptocurrency thing hit in December, January, and the cards have been like $2,000 and up since then for the most part. Like, you can find them at retail sometimes for less than that, but they're constantly going out of stock. So you move to this, and it's like, hey, guess what? It costs $1,200, which is a lot less than $2,000, but it's a lot more than $700, and 10% more performance for 70% more money on the MSRP. That's not a good win. Like, the 3090 was never really a gamer card. $1,500 for gaming. People probably bought it, but that's not what we would expect most people to do. And so this is kind of like your old 2080 Ti, where it's like it's for your deep pockets, rich gamers, people who really have to have the best and don't care. Except the best is only $300 more, and at that point, it's like, well, why not just buy the 3090? That's kind of my take. So it's not like a bad card, but the market. I really think this was supposed to be like a $900 or $1,000 card, depending on the market. It was supposed to go up against the 6900 XT and come out a little bit ahead, and that would have been great. And then shortages and cryptocurrency happened, and Nvidia went, let's bump the price up to $1,200 and see what happens, because that's what the 2080 Ti sold for. So that's kind of where we've landed. It's not a bad card, but it's an expensive and, in my opinion, overpriced card. And I think a lot of people would agree, like the price is just too high. And at this point in time, it's like, do you spend $1,200? And I mean, like, let me also throw this out here. Zotac's card, I believe, has an MSRP of $1,800 or $1,700, one of those two. This is the AMP Hollow Edition, and that's more than the 3090. So that's not a good look, I don't think, for the industry, when cards that are supposed to cost $1,200 and were already too expensive end up costing 50% almost more than that.
So Andrew, I'll ask you, as if you were somebody shopping for a card, you were saying Jared is pointing to a 10% performance boost for $500 more compared to the Ti version, which I call it Ti2, the Ti version. So if you were paying $500 more compared to the non-Ti version, what kind of performance boost would you be hoping for?
I mean, that's a really good question, right? Like, I mean, question number one is how long is this gonna run alongside the existing 3080, right? Because like, if it's gonna run alongside the existing 3080, then I'd want to spend less on that upgrade, or maybe I'd want to spend more on the upgrade, but it wouldn't really matter because I'd have that choice. What I don't know, maybe someone's told you, Jared, is whether or not the 3080 Ti is going to supersede the 3080 completely and just like remove it from there. Because if that's the case, then it's not just like a $500 increase; it is a $500 replacement.
Yeah. So officially, Nvidia has not said anything yet, but I think when you read between the lines, so we've got the 3070 Ti coming next week, and it will have GDDR6X memory, but otherwise it's the same basic design as the 3070, which is just kind of the upgraded version of the 3060 Ti. And I think Nvidia is probably going to phase out the 3070, or at least their models. Maybe their partner cards who charge more, they'll continue. But this is kind of a money grab from Nvidia. It feels like they raise the MSRP on both the 3080 product and the 3070 product substantially on the 3080 Ti, and their partners who are on contracts to get chips for say they got the card for $500 before for a 3080, now they have to pay probably closer to $900 or $1,000, and Nvidia gets more of the margins and more of the profits that way, because if the cards are going to sell at $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 anyway to miners, to whoever, why doesn't Nvidia want the money? So if I'm right, then Nvidia will phase out the 3080. They'll say, well, we've got the 3080 Ti, the 3070 Ti, the 3060 Ti, and of course we've got the 3090 and the 3060 12 gigabytes. We'll have the 3050 probably at some point. 3050 Ti. I mean, those are on laptops, so I don't know why they haven't come to desktop yet. And that's kind of where I see the market going. It's like the super cards. When we had the 2080 Super, 2070 Super, 2060 Super, when those came out, they phased out the non-super variants except for the 2060. So I think that's what Nvidia will do, but they haven't officially said, and they can keep doing them, but I don't see why Nvidia would want to make a GA102 processor with the memory and all that stuff and say, hey, let's sell this with 10 gig for $500 or $400 versus let's sell it with 12 gig for $900. Like, that's double the price, or double the profits, or whatever you want to call it. It's more than double the profits because there's a baseline for the hardware cost, right? So it's like you go from a hardware cost of $300 and they make $200 to a hardware cost of maybe $350 with the extra memory, and now they make $600. So financially, as a business, that would make more sense. And their partners have been doing exactly that. You know, Asus, MSI, Zotac, Gigabyte, all these companies have had higher end products in the 3080 and 3090 and 3070 space that don't cost MSRP. They cost $100, $150, $250 above MSRP. And so Nvidia is kind of just saying, okay, you guys want to go that way, we'll join that party and make more money until the bottom falls out with the cryptocurrency stuff, which is thankfully kind of happening. And then maybe they can reduce the price, because, you know, when you create a contract saying these cards cost $500, you can't increase that to $600. Your partners will balk. But if you say it costs $1,000 and you say, hey, guess what? We're going to put them on sale and they're now $800, the partners will go, yeah, we'll take the $200 price cut. So it's easier to reduce prices than it is to raise them.
You look good when you reduce prices. But I guess to answer the question you asked me, Sharon, is that like that? Remember the 3080 as it existed had an MSRP of $699, right? That's what you're supposed to be able to buy it for. And look, a lot of people spend a ton of money on this hobby. You know, they really get their money's worth because they really enjoy it and they play games and they want the top performance. For me, when you hit that $1,000 for a single component, for me personally, like I'm a little more budget conscious. That's like, wow. And so seeing the 3080 Ti like past that, like for me, frankly, passes a line regardless of performance, or I'm like, I don't know if I want to hit my wallet that hard. So look, if you can afford it and you want it, I'm not telling you not to get it, but like for me, that's like a place where I'm like, I would want to see it drop. And knowing that you couldn't get the 3080 for $699, you know, and that this is going to go probably more expensively the same way because so many people are still going to want it, and we haven't gotten rid of the issue of scalping or anything like that. It's not great, but people are buying it. They're sold out.
Well, as Angel Limber says, at this point, we don't care if it is disappointing. We just want to be able to buy one, MSRP if possible. So people are getting desperate for sure.
And it's not a disappointing card. It's a disappointing price. It's funny because NVIDIA's marketing was like, it's the ultimate TI, and they referenced the GTX 1080 Ti. And like, that was an awesome card. The GTX 1080 Founders Edition launched at $700. The partner cards launched at $600. And then like 9 months later or whatever it was, they announced the 1080 Ti, and it had 30% more performance. And it took over the $700 price point and dropped the 1080 cards down to $500 or $550. So it's like, oh my gosh, at $700, you went from getting, 60 frames per second to a card that would get 60 to a card that would get 75 frames per second or 80 frames per second. And that was a great, like, people loved that card. The 2080 Ti was not the ultimate Ti. People were like, holy crap, that's a Titan card with a GeForce, then RTX, a GeForce branding, and it was too expensive, and people still bought it, but it was very expensive. And even the 2080 was considered, like, hey, that's too expensive. So now we're kind of, it's more of a 2080 Ti replacement than a 1080 Ti replacement, even though, like, as an upgrade, it would be more sensible if you were upgrading from a 1080 Ti. But if you've got a 1080 Ti and you don't want to spend a ton of money, I think you just hang on to it and forget about ray tracing and DLSS until, I guess, the RTX 40 series comes maybe next year. And then hopefully prices have fallen and things are a little less crazy, and you can get a card that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, and it will perform better.
Well, we will see. That's not. I'm not feeling that optimistic about waiting for the next series. Well, we do have a question for you, Jared, from Tatar Khan. Did you get a standing desk? Why is he looming over his webcam? You're not standing, for the record.
No, right? I'm sitting down in a chair. So I said it's been a crazy 2 weeks. So the full story is I moved. My family moved. We have moved from Washington down to Colorado. We've got family here and closer to family. there's a whole bunch behind that I won't get into, but needless to say, it was a very stressful last 2 weeks with packing and moving and closing. We actually just closed on the house we're buying in Colorado today. And so right now I am in my in-laws basement, not my father-in-law or whatever, but it's my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. We're at their house for the week. We should move into our own house next week. And so right now, most of my equipment, except for, you can see like my test beds over there. That's my power test bed, which is not fully functioning because one of the power bricks down here failed, melted in the move.
Wow.
And then this is my other main test rig here, and those both have the same hardware, the 9900K. So all of my other graphics cards are in a storage unit right now, and my webcam is in a box somewhere. And so I'm on a laptop, and the laptop doesn't have as good of a webcam, and I'm not set up at a nice desk area. And so we're just we're winging it for the week, but
Yes.
I very much appreciate my brother-in-law and sister-in-law their states, because I got sick on the move too, and now my sickness has spread. Not COVID,
we very much appreciate you reviewing an RTX 3080 Ti in all of that. Remember, Tom's Hardware does that for you.
That's right. It was a crazy thing. Like, it's funny, Nvidia, when they called, I said, I'm moving next week. And they're like, oh, you're killing us, Jared. I'm like, yeah, can you send this to my in-laws' house and I'll pick it up when I get there?
Yes.
So
a little behind the scenes look at GP reviewing while on the move.
Yeah.
Well, so if anyone has any questions about the 3080 Ti, just drop that into the chat. We and Jared will try to get into it later on in the show, and definitely check out his review online. I'm going to share that link in the chat so that's easy for you all to see. But Andrew, I know you've maybe not quite as busy because you're still in the same home, but you've also been busy this week. So you tested the Asus, this is a long name, the Asus ROG Strix G15 Advantage Edition gaming laptop. So I know it's going for $1,550, and that's with an AMD Radeon RX 6800M graphics and an AMD Ryzen 9 5900 HX CPU. So what can you tell us about this laptop, Andrew?
Sure. That's basically the same price as a 3080 Ti, just like by way of reference.
So this thing is kind of in a range of like, they're saying it's in a range of like 1549 to 16 to like 1700-ish, but also that where you're going to be able to get those configs is sort of regional. So there may be a slightly more expensive version with a QHD screen, but the version we had here, it has those specs. It has the Ryzen 9. It has the 6800M, which is the new GPU, the new mobile GPU from AMD. And it's also the first AMD Advantage laptop to come out, which is sort of like, if you think of like Intel has Evo for Ultrabooks, this is sort of like AMD's Evo for gaming laptops. And it is very AMD. In fact, we'll give you a quick tour because this thing is like covered in Easter eggs for AMD. And I'm sorry, it's definitely like a fingerprint magnet, but
yeah, I was about to make fun of you.
Like it even has like the AMD logo kind of like emblazoned into the lid here. You can kind of see it. And it has like this little code here. It's got this little cap. If you like to customize it, you can pop it off. This one has an R like a Radeon, but it comes in two other colors that come in the box. You can easily just, with magnets, pop one on there, and now it's a different color. Even like everything is like sort of in red on the bottom. AMD is back. Well, ROG says back on top, but back on top, but on the bottom. And so anyway, it is probably definitely one of the nicer AMD laptops, which is saying something, because a few years ago I would have told you that there wasn't a good AMD gaming laptop, but now there's been a handful. Performance on this has been pretty solid. It's definitely one of the pros with both gaming and graphics performance. It was typically, we tested against the 3060, 3070, and 3080 laptops, and again, all of NVIDIA's GPUs come in, with different amounts of power and wattage, but typically it was in line with the RTX 3070, which was in the Razer Blade Pro 17 that we tested, when at 1080p, which is what this laptop comes at, is it's a 1080p notebook. So if you're looking for that, like you get it pretty good. The 5900HX, very nice CPU. It happened to last really long on a charge for productivity. I mean, obviously, if you're gaming, it's only going to last so long. But like in general, like our test, which is constantly web browsing and running OpenGL tests and streaming video, it lasted for more than 10 hours, which is really cool. It has Dolby Atmos audio, and which so the speakers are really nice on it. And then there's just some of the AMD Advantage program stuff definitely like shows up. It was fairly cool at a lot of the touch points. Like when I was gaming, the WASD keys, like they really didn't get all that hot at all. The display is fairly nice, which was always a problem on AMD laptops for a number of years, that you couldn't get a good display. This one, like, it looks really nice. I wish it were a little brighter, but in terms of color, it's really good. This is kind of on Asus. There's no webcam. That's not an AMD Advantage thing. It's just sort of a problem because now everybody is not everybody. Look, people are still teleconferencing a ton, and I don't know how long this has been designed. Asus has released a number of gaming laptops that don't have the webcam, saying, "Oh, you'll go get your own." Now it's kind of expected because of the world we live in. So I wish it had a webcam. I know they're releasing more ROG laptops that will have them. They're coming back. The only other issue we had was with SSD speeds. They were just kind of okay. But in general, I thought this was like a really nice laptop. I think the price is pretty solid considering. And I would say the only reason not to get it was either for the SSD speeds or if you want more configuration options, something like the Alienware M15 Ryzen edition, like you still get Ryzen, but it would go with Nvidia, has a lot more options. Or if you want to like the Razer Blade Pro 17, you can go up to the 1440p screen. But all in all, really, really nice option. The 6800M really performed quite well. So this is a good starting point. And there's a couple other of these Advantage laptops coming. HP has the Omen 16 coming in an AMD configuration, and we're promised announcements from MSI and Lenovo soon.
I have to say, like, I'd really, really like a 1440p, maybe probably 17-inch laptop. Like, I'm old enough and bad enough vision that I'm like, 4K laptops are not a thing that I enjoy. 1080p is a little bit too low of a resolution. I'm like, 1440p is that sweet spot. So I'm glad we're finally starting to see some laptops offer 1440p displays because, yeah. I mean, if you're gaming too, 4K is hard on a desktop to hit acceptable frame rates, and on a laptop, I'm like, yeah, most just can't do it.
So this one's 1080p at 300 hertz.
But they do have a 1440p option, don't they?
It appears in some region there may be.
Oh,
but I believe
maybe not the US.
This thing's going more officially. It's going officially on sale sometime this month, so I guess we'll see what they finally decide. But we were kind of told this is the one to really expect. There are some 1440p laptops coming, like that Razer Blade 17 we discussed, but this one currently doesn't have it. This is the one with the 300 hertz screen.
Yeah.
Which Asus really likes putting on the Strix because the Strix is really an esports-oriented laptop series.
So, Jared, I'm curious what you think as our graphics expert in terms of, AMD's current positioning in terms of the mobile GPU space with that 6800M and, the broader RX 6000M series.
It's interesting. So if you went back 2 years ago, AMD basically wasn't showing up in laptops at all, except for CPUs and integrated graphics. And I'm not saying there were no laptops with an AMD graphics card, but they were rare, and often they were kind of the ones that you were like, oh, I don't really like this design or that design or the screen or whatever. It was always kind of an afterthought. But with this latest generation, it's like RDNA 2 especially now, the chips are relatively power efficient. Like they can be power hungry at the top of the spectrum. Like if you get the desktop 6900 XT, 6800 XT, those are 300 watt cards, but they can scale that down a long way and put it into a reasonable laptop form factor. Conversely, Nvidia's laptop program, like they still sell way more laptop graphics cards. They sell more desktop graphics cards, but Ampere is not as, I don't know if you'd say it's not as attractive, but it is power hungry. So like if you look at the desktop, 3080 uses a GA102 chip, the big chip. The laptop 3080 uses a GA104, which is basically a desktop 3070. They also use the GA104 on the 3070 and laptops as well. So it's kind of this interesting thing where they used to say, hey, they used to say we have different desktop and laptop chips and we just brand them as we see fit. Then at one point, like with the GTX 900, GTX 10 series, and RTX series 20 series, they said, no, the desktop and the laptop chips are the same chip. So a 2080 desktop is the same as a 2080 laptop chip. Different clocks, but same chip. Now we're back to being different chips again because the desktop chips are simply too power hungry. Well, AMD can close the gap when power is like a limiting factor. So, the 6800M, I want to say it's kind of more like a 6700 XT on the desktop. Like it's not quite the full fat version of their desktop chips, but it's power tuned and performance tuned to fit into a laptop and still provide good performance. And they can compete with Nvidia. And the bigger story for AMD is still Zen 3 is like it's making a lot of inroads against Intel, and for good reason. So, now the AMD plus AMD is a really good combination.
And there's one other feature that I guess I didn't mention that I should have when you talk about the AMD plus AMD part is that this is the second laptop with what AMD calls Smart Shift, which means that the CPU and the GPU can share power. Oh, the GPU doesn't need so much, it'll send some to the CPU. The CPU doesn't, oh, this title's really GPU intensive, then we're going to give that over to the GPU from the CPU. The first one came out last year. It was the Dell G5 15SE. This is the second one. We're told, and at this point, any AMD Advantage one should have it, which means that HP Omen should also have it, and we'll see more of them. And I think that's part of what pushes the performance. I mean, that the 12 gigabytes of memory of GDDR6 pushes the performance, but by pushing the two, AMD does get some of their own technologies that you don't get in the desktop because Smart Shift kind of isn't needed there, right? Like there's less of a limitation in heat and power. But
yeah,
so you do get those little bonuses if you go with AMD and AMD. I'm looking to see how Intel and Nvidia respond to that.
Well, and Intel may have they've got their own dedicated graphics card team trying to ramp up. We still don't have like DG1. Sorry, it doesn't count. DG1 is a prototype as far as I'm concerned, but they're working to get higher performance, better quality desktop graphics cards, and presumably they'll be pushing those into laptops as well. Like DG1 does kind of exist on a few laptops, but I wouldn't necessarily go that route if I were buying a laptop. But we might see some compelling XeDG2 implementations where you get Intel graphics that don't suck. So we don't know yet, but we'll see when the later generation DG2 stuff comes out. I got dog friends trying to visit me. Come here.
Jared's having all the fun today.
Yes.
So we do have a deep philosophical question I'm going to throw at you, Andrew, from one of the viewers asking, would you say that now gaming laptops make more sense than buying or building a gaming PC? Gaming laptops don't make sense to me for gaming.
I mean, that's a really personal question based on circumstances, right? I mean, first of all, right now, it's really hard to buy anything. Like there's a small part of me that wonders when this goes on sale, how many of them will be made for the same reason that it's hard to buy the RTX 3080 Ti right now, is that there is a huge component shortage.
Hey, will they be part of the Newegg shuffle?
I don't know.
For reference, all of Newegg's 3080 Ti cards were put into the shuffle this morning. I'm just I guess it's not the worst way to go, but like you have to win the lottery to win a chance to buy an expensive card.
But so do they make sense to you for gaming? I can tell you that in general, I mean, a lot of them perform really well. This performs more than well enough for, I think, a lot of people's needs. If you game at a desk and you want a big high-performance monitor and to be able to upgrade your system fully and completely and like having lots of different peripherals, then no, that doesn't necessarily make sense. You could plug this into a monitor, but this is really for you if you want to take, or any gaming laptop, if you want less space for the most part. There are some really thick ones. If you want something that's more portable, if you want the display just taken care of. And so, I mean, it really depends which of those advantages do you want. A lot of people are perfectly happy replacing a laptop every few years and getting new performance, and they don't have to deal with building it and finding all the parts. Most gaming laptops do let you replace a few, like the storage and the RAM. This one I think was just storage, but yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you want out of PC gaming. So if you really want that customizability, that upgradability, that personalization, yeah, I mean, it's still desktops, but it is cool just to see that the laptop space is getting really competitive again, which means there's going to be a lot of great options there. And it's like if AMD comes out swinging with CPUs and GPUs that people want, then the companies that are going to pay attention to them, and they're going to see what Intel and Nvidia have, and they're going to have to put out a lot of compelling products for all of their partners. So that's really exciting.
I think more than the laptop versus desktop thing for me right now is all of these shortages on components have made it so that buying a pre-built desktop actually starts to make more sense. Like it used to be, hey, you could buy, a Dell or HP or iBuyPower or whoever system vendor card, a system integrator set up where it's all put together for you, and you go, well, it costs $2,000, or I can build it myself for $1,700 or $1,800. Now it's kind of flipped because graphics card prices are so screwed up that it's like, oh, well, you can buy that Dell or Alienware with an RTX card, and it's still expensive. It might be $2,500, but it's like right now, if you try and buy a 3080, you might go to eBay and pay $2,000 just for the graphics card, and then you're still looking at $1,000 for the rest of the stuff. So in a lot of cases, it's now easier and cheaper to buy a pre-built to get like a certain level of graphics card hardware. And it's unfortunate because pre-builts, depending on who you get them from, they're not as upgradable as like a custom built PC like what I test on.
Right.
But I mean, like if you go through an iBuyPower or a CyberPower PC or whatever, someplace like that, usually they use off the shelf components, so you can pretty much use it like you would a custom built and then add your own stuff after the fact. But the prices right now are hurting the DIY scene a lot.
Yeah, so yeah, I think laptops do definitely have their advantages, and obviously as I think Jared said, like a lot of places, the laptops are where a lot of the component companies actually make the most of their money, is because those are the most popular. Is it right for you? Again, that's a really personal thing. But right now, whatever you can get is probably the best thing, whether that is a laptop or building your own desktop or buying your own desktop or buying a console if you can get that. But right now, we can't get anything. So good luck, my friends.
Yeah, I like the people who are like, well, you could just go and buy an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5 instead of just a graphics card. And it's like, well, in theory, but you can't buy those either. So you're screwed either way.
Well, yeah.
It's a great day to be a gamer. Just use what you have and enjoy it.
Good luck, I think, is the phrase of the year or so. So it's been.
Yeah, I saw multiple good luck finding one reviews yesterday on the 3080 Ti.
Wow. Well, if you have, the laptop is available. So if you have any questions on that or the mobile AMD's new mobile GPU lineup, drop that in. I see there's a couple in there. We'll get to the remaining questions at the end of the show. And while you're getting in your last questions, I do want to give you a sneak peek at what is in the lab at Tom's Hardware, because if not just for the fact that I have this graphic. So let me just adjust my camera. So let me turn it on. You guys need the full glory.
Call it ye old lab.
All right. So here, let's bring this up.
Ooh.
10 keyless.
Yeah, so what I have here is a Razer Black Widow V3 Mini Hyperspeed. Wow. So long name, small keyboard. This is a 65% wireless keyboard that could connect via dongle or Bluetooth, and it's currently going for, believe it or not, $180. Oof. So yeah. Well, one of the nicest things I think about this keyboard is obviously its form factor. Obviously no numpad here, but you still get some navigational keys, and most importantly, the arrow keys, because I like small keyboards, I like space, but I need arrows. So if I can get arrows, this is a thumbs up.
I need function keys. That's my thing. I need function keys. I can't do the 65%. I mean, I can, but they drive me bonkers because you're constantly doing the like FN+1 to get those function keys.
Here. So here, here are you can kind of see some of the side printed functionality there. You got some macro keys, media controls, things like that. So this is actually highly programmable if you don't mind using the software. Besides the macro keys, like almost every key is reprogrammable to one or two functions. That secondary function would be, while you hold down another key. So I could like program M to be what they call a hypershift. And when I hold down M, the B key will do something different. So that's a handy feature. Another standout thing here are the keycaps. They're actually ABS, double shot ABS, but they kind of feel and mimic the more expensive PBT type of plastic, which has that texture that you can kind of see. I'm trying to capture. You can see it a little bit, I think. So it has that texture which kind of fought off fingerprints well. But when I got to gaming, like it got pretty clammy pretty quickly. And I'm not a sweaty gal. I only glisten at best. So that was pretty. That's a con for me because it didn't take long for it to get so like clammy like that. And then finally, something I could tell you about the connectivity option. So like I said, it's wireless, so you can connect via a dongle. There's storage there, or you can opt to do Bluetooth. There's a switch there for switching to Bluetooth and a USB-C for the included cable. So what's cool about that actually is with the Bluetooth, you can connect to 3 computers and then toggle through them by holding FN and 1 or FN and 2, FN and 3. So you can have it like paired with 3, I don't know, like your TV, your work computer, your tablet, and then leave the dongle in your gaming PC. And then you can easily switch through devices without having to repair or move the dongle around, things like that. So yeah, there are a lot of interesting features here and a good look, but $180 is a lot to swallow. What do you guys think, Jared and Andrew, as I switch my camera?
I have a question, which is which switches are you getting on that one?
That is a very good question. So you have your choice of either Razer Green, which are clicky, or Razer Yellow, which is linear. That's what I have here. And those are your only 2 options. Their Black Widow line is pretty much their Razer's own switches, but not the optical ones, just their original like.
Is the yellow kind of like the MX Red?
Yeah, yellow is like Cherry MX Red, exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think? Oh, I like questions.
Yeah. Well, my other question about it is just it appears when you had it, it's got like kind of like a chin on it almost, right? Like it's not just like 4 side thin bezels. And so does that serve as like a wrist rest? What's the story there?
Oh, that's a good point. So no, it's not really a wrist rest, which is something to keep in mind because I insist on a wrist rest, and you'll obviously have to get one. Well, you don't have to, but you ought to get one that's this length, right? If you want the benefits of a small keyboard. So no, I don't find this serves as a wrist rest. I would want to buy my own, and I'd have to buy a new one because I only have a full size one. But there is an RGB Razer logo there that you can customize, Andrew. So you're not left wanting.
How long does it last on a charge? I mean, I'm sure with the RGB, not long, but like.
Yeah. So allegedly, Razer says it can last up to 200 hours, and that's going to be with no RGB. I am not afraid of RGB, so I set it to maximum brightness. This effect, this rainbow wave effect, where it's just like going through the whole rainbow constantly. At max brightness, and like there are some battery power savings, but it'll dim automatically. And I got about 27 hours before it died. But it'll charge very quickly because it's USB-C. So
you can use it wired through the USB-C, or does it still do wireless? Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of connectivity options, which is great. I was hard pressed to find anything in this 65% form factor that had this many features, from the programmability to the different connectivity options, but $180. And the keycaps are not they're double shot, which is better for durability and helps with the RGB, but it didn't feel as good as PBT, which would add to the price even more, I guess. So yeah, that's just a little preview of it. Our review will be on tomshardware.com soon enough. And actually reminds me, I will share the link to Andrew's Asus ROG Strix G15 Advantage Edition review right
That's a
now.
long name.
But yeah, definitely stay tuned to the site for this review. That was a Razer Black Widow V3 Mini Hyperspeed. I don't know if I won the long name product game of the week. I might have. Cool. So let's see what questions we have remaining. We do have one from, let's see, Tatar Khan. With the process, I think this is in reference to AMD Smart Shift, which you were discussing earlier, Andrew.
Right.
With the process sharing between GPU and CPU from AMD work with their answer to DLSS, which is called what?
Fidelity, FidelityFX
FX
Super Resolution.
Super resolution. And the answer should be yes, in that Smart Shift isn't something you can turn on and off in the laptop. It's just there. That's how it is. You can't turn that off. So it just does its thing. So I believe FSR will be something you can turn on and off. So
yeah, we should talk about FSR. That was actually probably the bigger news of Computex for me, graphics wise.
You're a big fan of DLSS, right, Jared?
Yeah, so DLSS has some cool stuff going for it. It's using machine learning to upscale, and it's like, how much is the machine learning really helping? Like, couldn't we just have a faster algorithm that doesn't rely on tensor cores? And it's a good question, and we're going to have AMD's answer soon, because they're saying, what game was it? They said it's coming on June 22nd
Godfall?
to Godfall. Godfall will get FSR, FidelityFX Super Resolution. And what they've said is they'll have, I think, 4 modes. It was like quality. I don't know if they were the same as NVIDIA's quality, balance, performance, and ultra performance or something. But whatever it was, there was different scaling factors. They didn't even say what they were, but they were saying like, hey, you could get up to 3 times the frame rate with their performance or ultra performance or whatever they called it mode. Here's the thing: is a fixed function scaling algorithm, upscaling algorithm, like we've had those for years. They exist in TVs, like if you've seen like Blu-ray stuff where it's like, oh, put your DVDs in and it will upscale it to 1080p, or put your 1080p Blu-rays in and it will upscale it to 4K. Like, that stuff has existed, and a lot of times it's pretty good. It's not perfect, and that's what we're really curious to see with FSR. But the cool thing about FSR is it is totally I don't know if you'd call it open source, but
but it's part of GPU open.
Yeah, it's GPU open. It is not locked to AMD GPUs at all. And in fact, they're saying it will work with Intel integrated graphics, which also implies it will work with just about anything above that. I don't think it's going to work with like old Intel integrated graphics, but if you have like a relatively modern, like an Ivy Bridge or a Tiger Lake, not Ivy Bridge, that's the wrong one, Ice Lake. I got the I. If you have an Ice Lake or a Tiger Lake laptop or anything newer than that, I think you'll get it on Intel. AMD showed it running Godfall on a GTX 1060. Yeah. So I mean, like, that's pretty cool. It's like, hey, gosh, even an old 1060 got like a 40 or 50% uplift in performance, and they're like, and see how good it looks. I'm like, well, I hated that part of the presentation, because we were watching a live stream at 1080p using highly compressed video, and they're like side by side showing this stuff and going, look how nice, you can't even see the difference. I'm like, yeah, you're darn right we can't see the difference, because it's full of compression artifacts. So I am very curious to see how the actual upscaling looks, because they say they're not using temporal information, temporal upscaling, that they're using spatial upscaling, which is what DLSS 1.0 did, which didn't work that well. So DLSS 2.0 uses temporal upscaling, and that's where they got a lot of their benefits from. I'm curious to see how well it works, what kind of hardware benefits the most. I think their quality mode, like the reality is, we've got games that use temporal upscaling solutions already. Like if you play Forza Horizon 4 or the Mordor games, the recent what was it called? Shadow of War, and the one before it did it too. But you could like it would detect your native resolution. So if you're on a 4K display, it's running at 4K if that was what your desktop was set to. And then if you went in the game and said, hey, run it at 1080p, it was actually upscaling 1080p to 4K. And it was, you know, it's not that hard to do that upscale, and you didn't really get a big quality boost, but FSR is going to try and add some quality to it, you know, some smart sharpening, smart filtering, whatever, to make it look more like native 4K, even though it's not. So I'm excited to see what it looks like. I think it's not a bad thing to have that option. I don't think it's going to look as good as DLSS most likely, but it's not bad to have more options out there for people who are like, you know what, it's hard to run games at 4K, but if I can drop the resolution to, you know, somewhere between 1440p and 4K and then upscale to 4K, I can get 40% more performance without really compromising image quality.
And as always, the big question is how many games will support it.
Yeah, and to be fair, FidelityFX, their broader FidelityFX suite. So they've got like FidelityFX and ambient occlusion, FidelityFX contrast-aware sharpening, and there might be another couple under the FidelityFX umbrella, but they've got quite a few games that have used them. Because they are part of GPU Open, it's super easy for developers to use them. I think they might even be integrated into some of the engines like Unreal Engine or Unity. So long-term, like the best case scenario, I think, is that this ends up kind of being like G-Sync versus FreeSync, where G-Sync came first. It's arguably better. It has some higher end tech, but being open, being more open and without the extra cost has allowed FreeSync to just proliferate. And so now we've got, G-Sync compatible, which is really just NVIDIA's way of supporting FreeSync without officially throwing in the towel. So I don't think DLSS goes away. I think it very well could remain the superior solution. But if you don't have an RTX card, being able to run FSR is not going to be a bad thing.
No.
So I want to bring up this next comment just so everyone knows this is going on. I don't know if everyone did. Speaking of availability, this is Angel's commenting. Should we applaud Best Buy's decision to sell the 3080 Ti's directly in stores? Or are we too comfortable buying online? So what, if I go to a Best Buy right now, I'll be able to find a 3080 Ti?
Are they saying they're not selling them online? Or like, I guess
that's what I'm imagining. Well, for one, it had to be online before because of the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So that's for the earlier cards.
I believe it was the Founders Editions being sold exclusively in stores. Or like 81 of the stores had them exclusively.
How many Best Buy stores are left?
There are a few in New York, at least.
Yeah. I don't think it's a terrible thing. I mean, like Micro Center, this is what Micro Center does, right? Like you can't buy hardly anything online through Micro Center.
Yeah.
And we constantly see people going, "Oh, go to Micro Center and get this thing for a great price." And I'm like, it sucked when I lived in Washington and the closest Micro Center was 1,000 miles away or whatever. But now there's one only like 50 miles away in Denver, so I'm kind of excited.
You get some cheap Raspberry Pis while you're there.
Oh, yeah.
I guess the question is, does this stop scalpers and bots and things like that?
Right.
And like, where would you come? And I mean, maybe a little bit. I'm sure some people are still willing to stand in line to resell a GPU. I feel like some people might argue about the idea of like having lots of people line up during a pandemic. That's sort of a personal thing with the way vaccination rates are going on. Will it stop the issue altogether? Probably not. But at this point, I'll say I appreciate anyone trying something.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think we need to be comfortable buying online. Like, that's how we've shifted. That's how we buy things. That's how you stay in business. Like,
yeah,
we need to figure out how to get it readily available online.
The only question I really want to know, and the question no one will answer, is how many cards were actually shipped and available today? Like worldwide, like NVIDIA has to know, like, hey, we've manufactured and shipped out 100,000 or whatever the number is, right? I would love to know that number because they all still sold out, right? But was it 10,000? Was it 50,000? Was it 100,000? I suspect probably closer to the middle of that range, maybe even the lower end of that range. But you know, they just don't tell us. So
Sal Drex says that the UK now scans for unrealistic RTX 30 prices. If all countries do this, there will be no scalpers and high GPU prices at online stores.
I had not
I
heard
don't
of that.
know.
It's
Yeah, I don't know
fascinating.
how you.
So
Yeah, that's a lot of government involvement, I guess.
I
Which,
don't know how you control that long term
yeah,
because then the people just go and sell in a different country.
Tatar says, could they give out these cards if people get vaccinated? Get your vaccine, get a GPU.
I didn't
worst
get
case
anything
scenario,
from
you
a
flip it.
vaccine lotto.
Yeah,
What was that?
yeah, that's the new egg shuffle. Is you get vaccinated, you get an entry into the shuffle.
Yeah, can I get vaccinated again just to have a chance at winning a 3080 Ti? Actually, not winning one, winning the chance to buy one.
At least we're thinking, we're brainstorming, we're all trying to think of something.
But what you said, Sharon, makes a lot of sense. Like, did we get too comfortable? It's like, on the one hand, like selling through brick and mortar makes sense in that it probably does to some degree prevent scalping and bots. But online exists, and not everybody can afford to wait outside a Best Buy or a Micro Center at 7 a.m. Maybe they have kids or a job or something that keeps them from being there. Yeah, something else, whether it's a hardship or just life, that keeps them from standing in line outside a store. Or maybe like you, Jared, there's not a store not a store that carries it in stock nearby. So I hate to be like, they should fix it and not have a solution, but they should fix it and I don't have a solution.
Hey, we're tech nerds. We want to get online. That's how we hide behind our monitors. Come on.
I can't remember the last time I really went and bought hardware in a store. I think actually I did this with my dad a few months ago. I was out helping him and he needed something, a switch or something, that I was like, oh, let's just go down to the local store and pick one up. But otherwise, I'm like, it just pains me every time I look at local prices and I'm like, okay, I can go to Best Buy or some other hardware store in town and end up paying 25 to 50% more than if I just go buy it online. So, and Walmart doesn't usually, and Walmart doesn't usually carry the stuff that I want. So, but hey, we could also talk about the 3070 Ti coming next week, right? How fast will that sell out?
Considering it's going to be cheaper than this, probably even faster.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
that one's going to be, I'm actually really interested to see the 3070 Ti in terms of performance because it's got GDDR6X memory now, which means it's got like 40% more bandwidth than the 3070. So it could actually offer a fairly sizable upgrade in performance depending on how bandwidth limited the card was before. Of course, the counterpart to that is now it's got to cool the GDDR6X memory, which has been a problem on some of these cards. But we'll find out next week how it performs, right? But it's the same story as the 3080 Ti. They increased the price. At least this one, they only increased it $100, and they added the GDDR6X memory. So I'm like, actually, I don't feel so bad about that one. The 3080 Ti price increase was far more painful.
Well, I'm sure Jared will be testing that ASAP, whether he's in his basement or in a house or his brother's basement. He will get it done.
If I come on next week, I should be in my new house, in my new office. I'm so excited. I'll have an office that has a wood floor in it, so that a laminate floor, so that I can roll around on my chair and not get stuck on the carpet.
Yes, and worry about static shock.
Yeah.
On the carpet. All right.
I actually put plywood down on top of my carpet at my old house just for that reason, because I was like, this is hard to get around.
Now you'll have to get a mat so you don't scratch up the floors.
No, I'm not worried about that.
He's like, it's my house. All right. Well, I've had a lot of fun today. I hope you all have too. I want to thank everyone who's been watching. I remind you to like us on Facebook and YouTube so you can stay caught up with all of our videos and fun. And I also want to remind you that you can download the show as a podcast. So we have links to Jared's RTX 3080 Ti review. There's the card right there. Links are in the chat and the description. Andrew's Asus ROG Strix G15 Advantage Edition live on the site now. Stay tuned for my Razer Black Widow P3 Mini Hyperspeed. And yeah, just stay tuned to the site. Lots of great stuff there. Quick thanks to Andrew and Jared. And that is our show. We'll see you next Thursday.
Bye.